When?
Hey everybody, Adventure Alex here, and we're going to talk about amphibians and reptiles. Amphibians are things that live in the water and on land, like frogs and salamanders and stuff like that. And reptiles are things that have scales, like lizards and snakes and stuff like that. So let's talk about amphibians first. Here I have an example of a California leopard frog. And a leopard frog, there's a lot of them in these jars. The leopard frogs are pretty cool because they have these really long legs that are used for jumping and also for swimming. So they reach back and push for the water when they're in the water, and they can jump on land. And they have these really cool spots. So these ones are native to the rivers in California. But something that's kind of sad for leopard frogs is they're getting pushed out of place by a different frog that's invasive. So a long time ago, people actually started bringing California bullfrogs into American bullfrogs into California, and they're really big. And so they eat these frogs and they outcompete everything else in the rivers. So this is pretty cool. It's an American bullfrog, and they are really neat, but there's a lot of them in our rivers. So these two are our examples of frogs. And another type of amphibian that can live along rivers, and that means in the water and on land, is a California newt. So here is an example right here. And this newt, remember how these jars take away their color? That's what Nature Jake said before. So these can be bright orange, and you can see they have a tail that has been flattened for them to swim in the water. And they have legs so they can walk on land. And these guys are bright orange usually because they're poisonous. And if another animal were to eat them, they would get sick and probably die. So that's what's really cool about the newt. Then we've got our amphibians there, right? And then we're gonna move on to our reptiles. So even though these lizards here that I'm gonna show you look like the newt, they're a little bit different because they don't like the water, they don't live in the water. So since we're moving on to reptiles, I want you to know a couple things about reptiles. They have scales. So they're these hard surfaces that cover the whole, hard plates that cover all of their skin, and they're going to be protection. And another thing I want you to know about reptiles is that they are ectotherms. And an ectotherm, it's kind of like if you've heard cold-blooded before, but this is a better term because ectotherm means that they're going to take on the temperature of their environment. So that's why you see sometimes lizards are on a rock trying to get warm, and then sometimes if it's too hot, they'll go under the rock if it's cold, and if it's too cold, they'll be really slow. So this right here is a western fence lizard. So you can see those really big scales right there. And you can see it's on the bottom, it covers their whole body. And this kind of lizard is the ones that you'd see in your backyard. So it's called the fence lizard because people always see them on their fence in their backyard. Another example is one that lives in the desert. And this one is the desert spiny lizard. Wonder if I can get him out. So the desert spiny lizard, they look really cool. They've got these awesome horns here, and they've just got a real mean looking face. So they need these as protection. So if something bigger than them tries to eat them, it's gonna get poked by its large horns. And these guys are really cool because they're really flat and they can run along the ground, and they eat mostly ants. You can see that's what they look like underneath, and they've got their really cool tail. So those are just some lizard examples of reptiles, but what other things are reptiles? How about crocodiles? So here's one right here. I'm not going to take it out because it's really big, but you can see this here is an example of a baby crocodile. And it's got that really big tail, and these guys live all over. They live in Florida, they live in Australia, and they can get really, really big. They can grow over 9 feet long, which this is 6 feet, so it'd be even longer than that. Another type of reptile could be something that doesn't live in the water at all, like for example, a tortoise. Some of you might have seen tortoises as pets, but they can grow to be really big. This is an example of a California desert tortoise, and they've got a hard shell on top to protect from predators, and they can hide their head in their shell. And if you look here, the shell is usually in a hexagon, which means it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. All right, so next we are going to talk about snakes. Snakes, like all the ones, there's a lot of them in this jar here. Snakes are lizards without legs that are really, really long. And so these snakes are super duper long, and they can slither around, and they have very muscular bodies, so they can grab onto things with their bodies. The ones in here, these are California king snakes, and you can find them all over California. Now, I did promise you guys a rattlesnake, so I am going to show that to you right now. So the thing with the California king snake is it has no venom. If it bites you, you'll be totally fine, and that's most snakes in California. So you'll be safe. But the ones that you have to be careful about are rattlesnakes. So here's an example of a rattlesnake. You can see it's a rattlesnake because it has a triangular head that's really, really flat. And then you can see along its body, it's kind of brownish with this diamondy pattern. And the biggest tail is right on its tail where you can see its rattle. And the rattle is actually what makes the sound when you get too close. It sounds like it's when the rattle shakes. And that's a warning sign from these snakes to back off. Now,
so Alex, should we be afraid of these snakes?
I think that you should not be afraid of these snakes. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. One thing you need to know, if you ever encounter a rattlesnake and it starts shaking, stop. Because these snakes will not chase you, and they will not try to bite you if you stay a good distance away. They're just trying to live, and they're worried that you're gonna hurt them, and so they're shaking to try to scare you. They are dangerous if you try to chase them and pick them up, but if you leave them alone and walk away, you'll be fine. They're not trying to hurt anybody. You should never get near one, and you should never try to kill one, because they are beautiful animals that belong in our environment. They were here before us in California and all over the United States. So I love snakes, even rattlesnakes, and they're pretty cool. And these are just some examples of stuff from amphibians and then reptiles that you find in California. But there's all different types of reptiles all over the whole world. The crocodile's not one you would find in California. That's the only one that's different. But I really like reptiles. I really like amphibians. You should not be afraid of snakes because they're really cool. And I hope that you guys have an awesome week, and tell me what you think about all these reptiles.
Thanks.